right? That's a 53% chance to lose that bet. We always poo-poo the upside down part of that thing. Don't make that mistake, okay? Calculate your probability of what you want to see, but also don't forget the upside down of that, right? The inverse of that is also true. We don't want to make the mistake of forgetting that, right? Again, the casinos kind of got you by the short hairs. We say this all the time, right? All right, let's talk about probabilities. And here we are in session 2 of Gambling 301, which, by the way, is all about the math of gambling. So, getting into probabilities, one thing we have to understand, and we'll talk about this point every single day, which is the house always wins. There's lots of reasons for why we say the house always wins. Reason number one, today's topic, probabilities. And what are they? It's no more complicated than the likelihood of a certain outcome occurring. Period. End of story. That's it. It has nothing to do with your likelihood to win or lose a bet. It's just how likely it is for something to happen. Why do we care? Well, I think knowing your realistic chances to see what you want and also to see what you don't want to have happen for the next event, it's important to help you sense the danger. And I think it's also important to know where your opportunity is and when the opportunity may arise, and you can embrace it and maybe seize it a little bit too. So I think knowing how the math works, how do you calculate these things, but also just kind of knowing what the probabilities of certain things are in space and time just helps you out here. So how do we calculate it? Pretty simple. We're just going to divide the universe of total outcomes, everything, by the number of outcomes you're looking for. If that division ends up in 0, it's an impossible thing to win. If it's a 1, then 100% you're certain to win. And the easiest example is to consider a single die. Okay, it's got 6 sides to it, numbered 1 through 6, right? There's 0 chance to roll a 7 with 1 die, right? The number doesn't exist. That would be an impossibility. To roll a number greater than 0 would be a certainty. That would be the probabilities there, right? But let's look at like a real thing. For example, a single number on that die. There are 6 unique numbers around a die. Each one of them has a 1 in 6 probability of resulting. The way that you add that up or divide that out, it's 1 divided by 6. Each number has the same equal chance, 16.67% chance or probability of showing up when you roll a die. That's the way you calculate it. If you look at like a more complex example, even numbers, the 2, the 4, the 6, there are 3 of those on the die, right? You've got a 3 out of 6 chance, 3 divided by 6, 50% chance to see an even number, or I guess an odd number too, come up. That's the math. Divide the total number of outcomes by the number of things you're looking for, and that's really basically the way that you calculate this. Now, in games like craps and roulette, you'll often hear this called coverage, right? It's what percentage of outcomes can you expect on a hit to hit or not hit, right? How much of the board do you have covered, perhaps, right? And in craps, we can look at like this. And I'll look first at a hopping type of bet, a field roll. So the field in craps, it covers the 2, 3, 4, 9, 10, 11, and 12. The 5, 6, and 8 are excluded, and of course the 7. So there's 16 ways to roll a field number. There's 36 total ways to roll the dice. Between 2 dice, there's 36 combinations. So you have 16 out of 36 is your probabilities there. At division comes out to 44.4%. That's what you have a 44% chance on every roll of the dice to hit a field number. Okay. Looking at another single outcome, a 6 or an 8. There are 5 ways to roll a 6 or an 8. For the 6, you can roll a 5 and a 1 and a 5, a 2 and a 4, a 4 and a 2, or a 3, 3. There's 5 ways. The 8, same way. You can 2, 6, 6, 2, 3, 5, 5, 3, or the 4, 4. In either one of those, you have a 5 out of 36 chance to roll a 5 or 6 or an 8. That adds up to, or that divides down to 13.8% to roll either a 6 or an 8. If you want to look at multiple numbers, like the inside bets in craps, there's the 5, 6, 8, and 9. Between those 4 numbers, there's 18 ways to roll them, right? There's 4 ways to roll a 5, 5 ways to roll a 6, 5 ways to roll an 8, 4 ways to roll a 9. It's 18 total ways to roll. Again, there are 36 total combinations, right? On the next roll of the die, you've got an 18 out of 36 or 50% probability that one of the numbers you have money on in that case would come up. That's how we figure probabilities. And the across bet just makes that a little better for you, right? You have You add the 4 and 10 to it, you get 24 ways to see a number you want, 6 ways to see a number you don't. But your 24 out of 36 probability, 66.6% chance probability to see one of the numbers that you're looking for come up. That's how we calculate probability. Again, it has nothing to do with how likely you are to win the bet, because that doesn't take into account what takes your money away in craps. Those bets are multiple resolutions. We'll talk about that in a future lecture here, but that's a way to look at basic probabilities in a game like craps. Now in roulette, and we'll just do a double zero example here. The double zero roulette, the nice thing about calculating probabilities for roulette is that every spin of the ball is a completely unique thing. So the probabilities and your odds end up being the same. Here it is, right? A single number is a 1 out of 38 chance to show on the wheel, right? Each number from 1 to 36 and the 0, double zero exists once on the wheel each. When they spin the ball, there's a 1 in 38% or 1 in 38 chance or a 2.6% chance for you to win. If you're betting a street, which is 3 numbers, it goes to 7.9%. A double street, 6 numbers, again, 6 out of 38, 15.7%. A dozen, which is 12 out of 38, 31.5%. If you're going to catch a binary bet like a red black or an odd even or a high low, it's 18 out of 38%. 18 out of 38, rather, 47.3%. There's no 50-50 bet there, right? You're getting paid 1-to-1 like it's a 50-50 bet on those, by the way, but it's only a 47% chance of winning. So that's why the casino always wins. You are an underdog like that, and you're getting paid even, which kind of sucks. All right, but when you combine them in roulette too, you can just look at the totals, right? So a street plus a dozen, right? So a dozen is 12, a street is 3. That's 15 ways. Okay, 15 out of 38 ways, 39.4%. 2 streets and a dozen ends up being 18 out of 38, or 47.3%. And obviously, 2 streets and a dozen is 18 numbers. It's the same as red or black. It's the same as odd or even, same as high low. Roulette is this interesting game where these combinations of all the different things end up being the same amount of coverage. And that's why I think probabilities and understanding how they get calculated is kind of an important thing for you. So there you go. That's roulette and that's craps. Poker, baccarat, blackjack, those games, way more complicated. Okay. There's no coverage there. It's more about all of the possible outcomes given the current state of the game. And the current state of the game is like, how many decks are in the shoe, number one, how many cards have been played, which cards, all of that matters when calculating probabilities. And you're thinking about, like, for example, you got a 14. Okay. How many ways can you get to a 20? Let's look at a 21, because a 14 could be a quote unquote good hand if it's a 21, a 20, or a 19, let's say. Okay. Just looking at the 21, how do you figure from 14, how do you get a 21? Well, you can draw a 7, a 6 and a 1, 6 and an ace rather, a 5 and a 2, a 5 and 2 aces. There's all these ways just to make a 14 look like 21 or 20 or 19. Factor in how many of those cards are no longer there, how many sixes are left in the deck, that kind of thing. It really gets complex and your head explodes, right? And that's why you've got something like this. You don't have to think about it much in blackjack. Just know that the probabilities change based on the shoe thickness, how many decks are in there, how far into the shoe we are, what card's been pulled out of the shoe. Basic strategy accounts for all of that. Now, if you're a card counter, card counters have this ability to put math behind the thickness of that shoe and the count of the cards. And they know that the probabilities to achieve a 21 from a 14 may be different based on what they know to be left in the shoe. So in that case, understanding the calculation of probabilities works. And again, they're not looking at every possible thing. They've made generalizations based on a broader count of the deck. It means the probabilities have shifted in this direction ever so slightly, and that's where they make their betting decisions. So again, baccarat, I think, has something like 2 quadrillion probabilities, or 2 quadrillion ways for the banker to win in an 8 deck shoe. It's impossible for you to calculate here. Know that the math has been done for you, and that's why you play the way that you do in Bach. You banker all the time, player all the time, or follow the shoe. Regardless of what you do, the probabilities of mapping out quadrillions of outcomes is impossible for you. Don't worry about it. Games like roulette and craps are where that becomes more, I think, front and center for most of us. Okay. Um, Something to consider too is this idea of multiple probability. And this comes down to like, what's the probability of something happening twice? And specifically back to back, right? This happens in craps a lot. We have this conversation in craps all the time. Okay. It's impossible for a seven to roll five times. Now I've done it. I've done it multiple times. I've seen people do 6 or 7 sevens in a row. I think there's stories out there of guys rolling 10 in a row. It's really hard, right? What is the problem? What's the math say about it? Okay. Or hitting, let's say, a dozen twice in a row in Baccarat or in roulette, rather. The probabilities for these things, they grow exponentially. Okay. So if we know, for example, that in craps, there's a 1 in 6 probability or 16.67% chance of rolling a 7. We know this. That's baseline. It's a 1 in 6. Okay. To roll it twice in a row, what you do is it's exponential. So it's 1 out of 6 times 1 out of 6 to roll 2 sevens back to back. So when you multiply the probabilities together, you get what it looks like to roll the same result sequentially. Okay. If you're going to do or see what it takes to roll a 7 3 times, okay, it's 1 out of 6 cubed. 4 times, 1 out of 6 to the 4th power. And you'll see that when you run those kind of numbers, it gets really, really tiny. The way that we look at it. And this is where, and this will lead us down the road here of some gambler's fallacy. Let me show you the math here on this. Let's take that 7 example. So we know that to roll a 7, right? It's a 1 out of 6 chance to roll 7. So 0.166 or 0.167 is the number we're going to use. Okay, so 0.167 times 0.167. That's what it looks like to roll a 7 twice. It's 2.67 or 2.7% to roll a 7 back to back in craps. Okay, to look at that 3 times in a row, it's 0.167 times 0.167 times 0.167. 3 times, it's 0.0046 or 4.6 hundredths of a percent to get in there. Okay, that's pretty low. Okay, let's do it to the 4th power. Let's go 0.167, and I'll raise that to the 4th power. To get 4 in a row, it's 0.0007. That's minuscule, right? Remember, 0.00 is that's 1% if it was a 1 in here, right? It's 7,000th of a percent. Pretty tough to do, right? To get 4 sevens in a row, yet it still happens. And there's a reason for why it happens. We'll talk about the reason why, even though it's so low of a chance to happen, that it can still happen. We'll talk about that on Gambler's Fallacy Day. I've got a whole lecture planned for you to talk about exactly this scenario, which is it sure seems like that's an impossibility. So after a 3rd time something happens, you should bet against it. That's what a lot of people think. We'll talk about that and why, even though this calculation is a true thing, why that also is the wrong thing to put front and center. I think it's important to know, but it's not important to execute. Let's do another example. Let's look at the reds, red or black in roulette. Let's take a 50-50 bet. Okay, so we know that we've got an 18 out of 38 probability to win red or black or odd or even or whatever. Okay, 47%. Let's just use 47% as the number. 40.47 as the number. What does it look like for the croupier to roll 2 reds in a row? Well, it's 0.47 times 0.47. Okay, 22% chance you see 2 reds back to back. If we go 0.40, shit, did I do that wrong again? Let's click that out. Let's look at the let's do a roulette example. Okay, let's take a look at the simple one, like the red and black or the odd or even or high low. Okay, we know there is an 18 out of 38 chance on a 00 wheel to get that. It's a 47% chance, 0.473 chance probability to get a red. Okay, what does it look like to get a red twice in a row? Well, it's 0.473 squared, 22.3%. That you'll see 2 in a row. How about 3 in a row? Let's clear that out. Let's go 0.473 cubed. Well, now you're at a 10.5% chance to see 3 reds in a row. Okay. How about to the 4th power? We'll do 0.473 and I'll raise it to the fourth power. And now we get a 5% chance of seeing 4 in a row. Now, how many times you walked by a machine and seen 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 reds in a row, or 9 blacks in a row, or 9 highs in a row? It happens. Okay. Again, these calculations here are future predictions. We'll talk again more about this in fallacy day, but know that multiple probability is a real thing. This is how you calculate it. It gives you a look at what something might, the probability of something happening in the future n number of times in sequence. Having said all that, here's an important point to remember. We love to talk about winning. What does it take for us to get our bets down, right? Here it is. The inverse of all that is also true. Don't forget this, okay? If something's got a 43% probability to happen, there's also a 57% probability that it's not going to happen, okay? We always look at what it takes to get what we want, right? The 47.3% chance to get a red or a black in roulette's great, right? But remember, you're upside down, right? That's a 53% chance to lose that bet. We always poo-poo the upside down part of that thing. Don't make that mistake, okay? Calculate your probability of what you want to see, but also don't forget the upside down of that, right? The inverse of that is also true. We don't want to make the mistake of forgetting that, right? Again, the casinos kind of got you by the short hairs. We say this all the time, right? The probabilities are what they are. You never get paid except for one bet in the house. You never get paid on anything based on the true probabilities. You always get jacked a little bit off of true probability. And that's the way that they win. That's why I say the house always wins. You never get paid right. But knowing the likelihood of something to happen, I think is a pretty important thing. And I think if you can calculate that, especially on the fly, and have some of the more common things that you do memorized and know that in advance, it's going to help you make better decisions at the table. So there it is. That's our discussion about probabilities. In a future session, we're going to talk about odds, which takes probabilities here a little bit and looks at what the probability is of winning a bet, not just of an outcome happening. And we'll also, again, like I said, take a look at what gambler's fallacy is and how probabilities can lead you to making fallacious decisions. And we'll take a look at how all that works coming up in the rest of Gambling 301, the math of the game. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. Please feel free to leave us a comment here in the comment section for the video, but really better still, join us on Discord. Go to casinogaming.tv and hit the community link in the menu there and join our Discord. That's where me, other YouTubers, and all of our subscribers hang out. We sit there and talk strategy and just BS kind of all day long. It's a great way to get connected and stay connected and kind of interact with the team. Learn about meetups and get-togethers and all that kind of stuff. So with all that said, again, thanks for watching. I really appreciate your time. God bless you, and I will see you in the next one.